welcome to another episode of our Greater Statesville Chamber Advocacy podcast. We have such a special guest today. I'm so excited. I'm going to let William kind of introduce you, but welcome. And thank you, William, for chairing our advocacy committee with the Chamber. We appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you, Shannon. We're pleased to have with us today Congressman Patrick McHenry. Congressman McHenry is representing the 10th Congressional District in Congress, and that includes Statesville. He's also chairing the House Financial Services Committee, and in that role, you see a lot of things. You've dealt with a lot of things over the last couple of months.
For better or worse.
Well, right? Exactly. We've had some banking collapses. Yes. We've had some issues there. We've had things that appeal broadly to the masses, but I'm just going to go ahead and fire one off because of my day job and what I do in the financial services industry. The environmental and social governance, ESG, seems to have taken a life of its own. And there are some on the positive side, there are some on the negative side. What's going on there? What are you addressing as far as the committee's concerned?
Well, what we're trying to address is businesses sticking to being businesses rather than political entities. And what we have now are a series of proxy advisory firms and a number of non-economic players that are having an outsized impact on public companies. Mm-hmm. That is disadvantaging American companies. It is making them focus on issues that could not be otherwise legislated. For example, on environmental issues, look, that's a serious society-wide debate we're having on carbon and climate change, and we should have that debate, yes. But it should not be the venue of public companies to effectuate governmental policy on climate, much less non-economic actors that are trying to push them to do these things on climate policy. Social is social. Those social issues, look, that is a matter of political debate in our society. Governance, though, the issue of governance of public companies is very important. Whether or not you have a qualified board of directors that knows something about the business that they're running, or in charge of overseeing. For example, Silicon Valley Bank didn't have a banker on the board. So that would be a negative, you would think, for proper governance of those institutions. So what we're trying to do legislatively is to bring clarity to those owners of stocks or mutual funds about how their shares are being voted and what proxy advisory firms are doing, and making sure that this power goes back to those that actually own the share of a company, rather than handing it off to somebody who's going to go play politics with it. Mm-hmm. And so we've moved legislation out of the House Financial Services Committee in July to do that very thing. Bill Heising, a colleague of mine from Michigan, led this effort, and Brian Stile of Wisconsin, and they did a masterful job of crafting legislation to put shareholders back in charge, rather than a few folks that are trying to play politics.
Sure. Well, and as you're aware, the Chamber represents the vast majority of the small businesses in this area. And once a year, we put together a legislative agenda, things that we poll the businesses on to see what's important to them that can be dealt with at the local level, at the state level, and at the federal level. And there's this misconception that I see very often that what goes on in Washington really doesn't affect me here. Right. You know, they're way up there. But a perfect example would be the earlier this year, the Federal Housing Finance Agency essentially announced changes to the level pricing adjustment in mortgages to basically, I guess you could say, harm people that have done a good job with their credit and essentially making them pay more for mortgages. Where is that in the process?
Well, we've had the administration go back to the drawing board on this, thankfully. What they wanted to do, what the Biden administration wanted to do, is to reprice mortgages so that those that have higher quality credit will pay more, and those with less high quality credit will pay less. Mm. And so they're rebalancing that portfolio to advantage those that have less good credit, if that makes sense. Right. And so we raised such a fuss about this in legislative hearings. My colleague from Ohio, Warren Davidson, led this effort. And we got the administration to go back to the drawing board on this, which is a very good a very good thing. But we're going to call out all these misdeeds wherever they may be, and those issues that this administration is trying to put in place that are going to disadvantage folks that should have better access to credit. We're going to make sure that the American people know about that. The harm is in our communities, though. When you're trying to do the right thing, pay your bills on time, save up, you should be advantaged for doing that. You should not be disadvantaged for having higher savings or better credit, regardless of how much you save. Better credit. So these are important issues that people don't see every day, but they're the details of policy that I'm trying to focus on.
One of the challenges that you hear very often in small businesses is the regulatory stranglehold in a lot of cases that they have to go through to get either permits or get licenses or be able to do business. What can be done about that?
Well, that's driven largely at the state and local level, and that means you have to have those elements of our government be receptive to new business startups, be focused on innovation. At the federal level, it's largely driven around tax policy and larger economic policy of regulation, of getting permits for large building like roads, bridges, highways, airports, and things of that sort. As a result of the legislation that Congressman Garrett Graves and I legislated back in May, called the FRA, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, we have the first change to our environmental review process since the early 80s. Wow. That will speed up the major building permits that require environmental review. Those things are of large national import. Think about the latest runway at the Charlotte airport. Sure. Mm-hmm. Think about the widening of I-77. Those things that require a federal environmental review are going to be dramatically sped up as a result of us passing this legislation. That means that money can go further. That means the economic results will be achieved faster, and the benefits are to the American people.
Sure. The Chamber's legislative agenda deals with 4 areas: economic development, infrastructure, education, and innovation. And under economic development, the first bullet point that everybody wants to talk about is supporting tax policy that encourages growth, investment, and job creation. And I know that's very important to you as well.
Highly important. Look, the tax law changes we made in 2017, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act has had great economic benefit to the American people. That means small businesses can better compete internationally. It means individual families are paying less as a result of this. Their taxes are easier to do, and you're able to do them more quickly. It means that corporations have a level playing field internationally, or not completely disadvantaged when they're competing against international peers. Those tax changes have led to greater economic growth. And we have to make sure that we care for those and ensure that the American taxpayer, their voice is heard in Washington. What we have from the Biden administration is a focused effort on trying to go through people's tax returns, audit them more closely, more frequently, and a greater number of people. This is not about millionaires and billionaires. That's a lot of language about that. It's about the average taxpayer, and especially the average small business person,
sure,
having more audits as a result of Biden administration policies. I don't think that's right. I don't think it's responsible. I don't think it's reasonable.
Sure.
That's the reason why they want to get into Venmo and PayPal accounts and see how much you're paying your babysitter. It's not about millionaires and billionaires. It's about your babysitter paying their taxes on the $500 or $600 they make over a whole year.
Right.
And that, to me, is a problematic set of policy from an administration that is supposed to be looking out for the little guy but is doing the exact opposite.
I would call that an overreach.
Yes.
Is there anything we could do at this level to help with that?
Well, I think making sure the average small business person knows about this, knows about this new tax reach that this administration has, and to make sure that they're sharing this with their members of Congress and their senators.
That's the first I've heard about that one, so that's a little scary because we
Not
do
good.
Yeah.
We all use it, and we all pay random expenses, but this is not, so much of the tax agenda of this administration is about more audits, and more audits for small business folks and average taxpayers rather than their language that they're saying is around millionaires and billionaires.
Sure. You mentioned international trade. We have quite a number of businesses in Iredell County and in Statesville that do business overseas. And the elephant in the room is China.
Yes.
So your thoughts?
Well, look, we have to compete with China. The fact is they're the second largest economy. 2 years ago, everybody said that they would be the largest economy on the planet. That's not the case. Why? Because America keeps growing. We keep innovating. We keep driving ahead economically. We're messy and open, but you have a rule of law and property rights, speech rights here in the United States. They have none of that in China. You have one-man control in the name of Xi. In China, we have an open system of government here in the United States. We're going to outcompete China over the next 30 years if we double down on being open, focus on the rule of law, speech rights, constitutional restraint of our government, and we will do better because we have that open system than their closed system. We can never compete with them on being more closed, more top-down driven. We're never going to outcompete a communist regime trying to better them on being centralized. So we've got to be better versions of ourselves. That means smart tax policy, smart regulatory policy, those property rights that I now keep referencing. But it also means we have to have international connectivity, both economically and diplomatically. And that means we have to have a concerted bipartisan effort on those issues. And that's what I'm focused on with us competing with China. That's what I'm focused on in terms of policy in Washington. And the average American will get the benefit of this if we're smart about competing with China. And that means that the next generation will be better off. Rather than being more beholden to China, we can be better off by being more independent and having stronger economic growth and international connectivity.
There's been a great deal of chatter about the dollar being replaced as the world's reserve currency. Any truth to that?
Yeah, there's great concern about it. And the fact is that Russia and China are trying to figure out a way to get around the dollar being the reserve currency for the world. If we pull back from the rest of the world with our trade policies, if we pull back from the rest of the world with our international connectivity, then the rest of the world won't have to use the dollar. Well, if you're trading with the United States, you need to engage in using the dollar. If you're not trading with the United States, like Russia does very little trade with the United States, so we don't have any stick with them. We don't have any power with them economically because they're closed off from the United States. We've closed operations with them before Ukraine. We transact more with China in 2 weeks than we do with Russia in 1 year's time.
Wow.
That's before Ukraine. And now it's next to nothing.
Right.
If you are buying and selling goods and services with the United States, you need to use the U.S. dollar. We need to make sure we enhance those relationships economically. We also have to be more competent at what we are with economic growth and with stable prices. That means we got to get our inflation under control, and we have to have stable rates from the Federal Reserve. Those things are being called into question right now because of how much federal spending has been spewed out of Washington over the last couple of years. So we've got to go check the fiscal house here, balance our budget, start right-sizing our federal government, bring our budget into balance. That is a great way to ensure that the dollar still remains a reserve currency for the world.
And that that has also created some of the rating agencies to take a look at U.S. debt, at our credit rating. And to that same end, earlier this year, as we were talking, you saw the collapse of 3 banks. How is our banking system in this country? How strong do you think it is?
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. We had the fastest rate increase from the Federal Reserve that we've ever seen. And you had 3 financial institutions, 3 of the 30 largest banks in America went out of business in February. And it didn't cause economic calamity. There was no bailout. The banks failed, and we still went on about our business. There was no bailout.
Sure.
So it tells me the banking system is far more resilient. It means that economic growth is far stronger, and so those things are good. What I worry about is our level of spending out of Washington. We're going to have a federal budget deficit of nearly $2 trillion as a direct result of the last 2 years of spending by Democrat House, Democrat Senate, and a Democrat White House. And so that unified control resulted in a great deal of more spending. Coming out of COVID, great deal of more spending. So I worry about that and the impact that that has on our financial system and the sustainability of our financial system. That is a big concern for me. And that's the financial stability piece that I worry about. There are a number of other things I worry about as well, but we've got to be smart about this and focused on financial stability, I think.
How did those 3 banks fail? I mean, they were the largest banks. How does that even happen?
Well, they didn't believe Jay Powell when he said we're going to raise rates for the Federal Reserve. And they didn't believe that the Federal Reserve would raise interest rates as quickly as they did. And they made some poor decisions.
Okay.
And the fact is, for our economic system to be able to flourish in the United States, you have to be able to win or lose. And if you take losing out of this, if you take failure out of this, then how do you really have a free market? How do you have a free economy? So we got to make sure that we failure is still an option for us to be able to reward success. And if we silo these banks out away from other financial institutions, that means a singular bank can fail and it not have a contagion impact. And I think that's important.
That's a big takeaway. That's right.
Well, we certainly appreciate your time. Thank you, first and foremost, for what you do for the district here. Thank you for your efforts in Washington.
Always great to be in Statesville and always great to be in Iredell County. Thank y'all.
Thanks
for having me.
We welcome you back anytime. Thank you.